Well, let's take a trip down memory lane once again. Let's take a look at the original PlayStation P, aka the PlayStation Portable, and see how this specific console holds up many years later after its initial release. Now, what's super insane is that the original PSP was by far one of the, not the most impactful console in my life, but one of the consoles that I look back at that I just continuously compared my console that I owned against it. We talk a lot about, people comparing phones all the time, or people comparing like stuff like they have to other people and it's not good. I was doing that all of the time. When I owned my Nintendo DS Lite, I was happy with it and I was content with it, but I would always look at the PlayStation P and I would always be jealous of it because there were just so many features that console had over my Nintendo DS Lite. I think the DSi was a closer competitor to the PSP, but I mean, when you look at this console, it doesn't even seem like it's been, 18 years since this initial release? The PlayStation P came out in 2005. That is insane. That was so long ago. And it's funny because there are still so many people who are obsessed with this console, rightfully so. There's still lots of development for a lot of PSP emulators as well. So the life of the PSP is still there. It's still, being supported, not officially by Sony, but, by third-party developers. So there's still some development going on for this console in this day and age. Now, a little history lesson, and I'm reading this from Wikipedia. The PSP was initially announced in 2003. So it's actually been 20 years, give or take, since this console was initially announced. Now, this console was unveiled in 2004, and then it was officially released, I think, in 2005. So this thing had a few competitors. So it had the Nokia N-Gage, which I remember, and it was pretty insane. You had the Nintendo DS Lite. You may have had the Game Boy Advance SP as somewhat of like a portable console, but this was Sony's first array into their portable lineup. They've already been making the PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 during this time, and I think they were very close of making their PlayStation 3. And with this type of console, this was like a very good middle ground for having a console that's like right in between two the PS2 wasn't super powerful, but the PlayStation 3 being as powerful as it was, this thing was almost like more of like I would say a portable PlayStation 3 than a PlayStation 2. Especially when you look at the software behind the PSP, it was way more similar to a PS3 than a PS2, but clearly the hardware was probably more in line with something like a PS2 when it kind of comes down to it. But I look at this console and it is insane what Sony was able to do during that moment. And again, when I was looking at the PSP and I had my DS Lite, I was always jealous of the graphics and just the capability behind the PSP. Now, on the front of this specific console, I remember when I was little, I would look at the PSP and it was basically crazy how big of a display this specific console had. But in reality nowadays, it's clearly not that big. That's kind of what happens. But still, it's a super decent display that this thing had during that moment. But it's funny because, like I said, whenever I go ahead and actually pick up my PSP from time to time, the display really isn't that, amazing. It's a TFT panel. The resolution was apparently 480 by 272. Very low resolution, but again, that's kind of what a lot of consoles probably had during that moment. So it's understandable. But it is insane that when you actually look at this type of console, when you think back of a PSP display, it seems like it's a way higher resolution than it actually was. Like that display to me at that time was like 5K probably, or 10K. And now it doesn't seem like that, which is pretty insane. You had these standard buttons on the sides, and I really did like how Sony kind of, spread apart these buttons. So we had the D-pad, we had standard triangle XY, we had the standard shape buttons on the right side. We had a few buttons on the bottom, and I don't even remember what half these buttons did. So you had the volume buttons, the home button, you had like a music button, and then the start and select button, which was cool. On the left side, you had that little joystick. So for a lot of games out there, you were actually able to use this smaller joystick with it, which was honestly very cool, because there were tons of games that, allowed you to use it. And that was something that Nintendo didn't even bring onto their consoles until probably like 2010 or 2011 with the 3DS. Like it was years after this console's release. And it's funny because now that I look at the front of this console really did impact, I would say, a lot of game development since this initial release. And you might be wondering why. Well, when you look at consoles like the Steam Deck, or all those portable gaming handhelds that a lot of people have bought, including Android gaming handhelds and even Windows and Linux gaming handhelds, it is insane because they almost look identically like this console. And I would say before the PSP, there wasn't really a console that looked directly like this. Some would say the Game Boy Advance, like the original Game Boy Advance, kind of looks like this. I would say the Nintendo Switch, all those types of consoles really did take inspiration from the PSP and probably the PS Vita more so than even like a Game Boy Advance. So just the front of this console is pretty insane. Another thing going cool with this console was that you had expandable storage basically from day one. So it was basically proprietary. I forgot what this thing was, like the Memory Stick Duo. It was a dumb choice. I really didn't like how Sony chose that direction. I liked when Nintendo did stick with the SD card route. That was way smarter. Having their own, I mean, we know why they did it, just to make more money, but it would have been a really nice thing had they kept some sort of like, either like an SD card or something. Having our own like memory card like that was very annoying. You did have like a little bit of a removable back on the side as well. So you can go and pop out the back. You can replace that battery super quickly if you wanted to. You can, do whatever you want to there. I think there was like custom firmware that you could go get like a magic battery, put it in there and do something like that too. So that was like another cool thing you had going for as well. And definitely on the outside, although it was pretty much built out of plastic, this thing, I don't remember, like, I just think this thing was like $1,000 machine at that time, which is so insane. Now, that's just on the outside. There was lots of things internally. We had the newer software, which was really cool. Well, not newer software, this was the first gen product, but it was still really nice. Sony decided to give it the software version that it had because it just looked beautiful. Like I said, it looked pretty much identical to the PS3 software. Clearly, it wasn't as capable as that software, but it was still very nice that we had even a little bit of capability like that, which was super cool. Now, this PSP ended up getting revised a few different times with a few different generations. So we had the PSP 2000, PSP 3000, PSP Go, and we had a PSP Street as well. I've since reviewed every single one of these consoles, and all of them brought their own little cool little things here and there. But that original PSP, with all of those games that came equipped within it, was amazing. And although it wouldn't be the first console I'd recommend buying anymore, like if you wanted to go ahead and actually play PSP games, you can do them on your PC, you can do them on your Android, you can do them on your iPhone if you really wanted to. But if you want to play these games on the go, I kind of do think the best PSP to buy would probably be either the PSP Street or the PSP 3000. Those are like the latest generations of those consoles. The PSP Street may be the better way to go for a lot of people. The PS Vita is also still a decent console, but with the PSP 1000, this is the one that pretty much started it all. And when I look at this original PSP, I just think about all the features and all the games available for it. And even the store that you had the PlayStation Store available within this specific console. And the cool thing about that, you didn't have to go into a store to buy a game. With its direct competitor, which was the original DS and the DS Lite, you had to go walk into a store to even get anything like that. But with this specific console, you didn't have to do that, which was really, really cool. So at the end of the day, I really do think that the original, PSP was a very good console. I think Sony knocks it out of the park. It sold quite a few copies. I mean, it sold a bunch of units for sure. And it's sad because they kind of stepped away from their portable lineup. But I do think there is some room in the future for Sony to come back. There's been some rumors that they could be making another PlayStation Portable. But, I mean, with their success of like the PlayStation 5s and all the other things Sony's got going on, I guess maybe they don't want to do it again. But I'll definitely tell you, the PSP, a very solid console. And, maybe if you want to pick it up, go for it. But, I'd probably recommend just playing your games via like a third-party way. So that pretty much covers it up. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.